What if I told you that the CIA in the 1980s operated a classified program called Project Sunstreak, which not only perfected the process of astral projection, also known as remote viewing, but then used that technique to locate the Ark of the Covenant, which is a gold plated wooden chest believed to contain the physical Ten Commandment tablets? And still further, what if I told you that certain social media influencers have directly claimed that the Ark of the Covenant, the real Ark of the Covenant, is held inside Mar-a-Lago, President Trump's Palm Beach, Florida home? That'd be a pretty good April Fool's video, wouldn't it? Well, it is in fact April Fool's today, but no, I'm not joking, because that's exactly what the story is. Of course, the story's not true, not by a long shot, but having witnessed what happened over the past week or so, I want to do a sort of meta commentary on everything that went down, because it feels like a really good example of how internet news takes on a life of its own, and then spirals out of control completely with increasingly outlandish claims, all for the sake of attracting attention. By the way, my voice sounds weird because I was recently sick. Sorry about that. Okay, when I say that this recently became a news story, I'm not kidding at all. Forbes, the New York Post, Yahoo News, The Independent, Express Tribune, Daily Beast, Economic Times, MSN, Daily Mail, USA Today, and the list goes on and on and on. We're talking dozens, probably hundreds of articles about how the CIA found the Ark of the Covenant. But if you start doing a little bit more media forensics here, you pretty quickly figure out where it all came from. For example, USA Today backtracks and references the Daily Mail. The Daily Mail simply references resurfaced CIA documents. But if you go backwards in the little media game of telephone, if you will, you find that the whole thing actually started with a Twitter thread. I don't know if it was this one in particular, because Twitter is now an engagement cesspool where everything even remotely successful is copied ad nauseum by hundreds of profiles for the purpose of farming ad revenue. But the earliest example I could find is this one right here, which outlines how declassified CIA documents from 1988 confirm the existence of the Ark of the Covenant, somewhere in the Middle East, I suppose, by using astral projection in a, quote, successful session. This is where it gets interesting, because the entire event in the news cycle is based on documents that were created in the 1980s and then declassified in the early 2000s. We're talking about something that's been publicly available for over 2 decades right now, and yet suddenly it's a news story. And suddenly people come out of the woodwork everywhere to not just insinuate, but straight up factually claim that not only have we found the real Ark of the Covenant, which would be groundbreaking if true, but that it was displayed, at least temporarily, in Mar-a-Lago. Let's dive in here and get more specific. The declassified documents that everyone's talking about are these, right here. Project Sunstreak, patient number 32 session notes. Now, rather than simply parroting these session notes verbatim, like so many Facebook pages and podcasts and influencers have already done, let me try to go beyond that and do a more general overview. We actually have a lot of material from about 25 years ago giving insight into Project Sunstreak, such as an actual overview from the Defense Intelligence Agency that not a lot of people have been talking about, or the Training Applications Procedure Manual, which talks about Sunstreak as a special access program involving psychoenergetics. And the real story here is that the CIA and the DIA conducted hefty amounts of research into telekinesis, telepathy, astral projection, and basically anything they could think of that might allow them better intelligence gathering mechanisms during the Cold War. Remember, this is all, or was all, declassified from the 1980s. To be completely honest, that kind of thing could become its own video, right? The whole telekinesis, telepathy, basically researching superpowers, which is fascinating. But for right now, let's focus on Project Sunstreak and the Ark of the Covenant. See, Sunstreak is actually derivative of what was called the Gateway program, which examined intricacies of the human mind, such as meditation, brainwave synchronization, and various other types of expanded consciousness, as they called it. The program, the Gateway program, conducted some 3,000 test exercises with over 1,900 different participants, and similar to Project Sunstreak, we actually have plenty of documentation discussing that. Declassified files from the Army, the CIA, and even the Stanford Research Institute in 2001, which pertain to direct perception of remote geographical locations, which is hyper relevant for today as we talk about patient number 32, who supposedly did a remote viewing witnessing the Ark of the Covenant. To be clear, I'm not saying that astral projection or out-of-body experiences aren't real. They very well might be. And lending credence to that effect, I want to read a paragraph from the conclusion segment of the now declassified Stanford research. Quote, "In this paper, we have described our investigation of particular aspects of paranormal functioning of human subjects. Specifically, we've examined the human capability to access and describe, by mental processes, information sources blocked from ordinary perception by reason of distance and shielding. We have found remote sensing to be a robust phenomenon in which experiences and inexperienced subjects are able to describe in words and drawings both the location and actions of experimenters placed at undisclosed sites at varying distances from the subjects. End quote. That seems possibly legitimate, right? Sure, maybe. But once you begin reading the session notes from Subject 32, the plausibility of the CIA legitimately discovering the Ark of the Covenant in the 1980s starts getting a little bit more hazy. For starters, the subject claims that the room that they saw was in the Middle East, but how did they really know that besides people spoke Arabic? They use extremely general terminology throughout, right up until suddenly becoming very specific and granular. They reference seraphim-type angels depicted on the box, which is interesting, sure, but the real Ark of the Covenant has cherubim angels, not seraph. So why suddenly get very specific and also get it wrong? Furthermore, there's no indication, so it seems, biblically speaking at least, that the Ark is even still here on Earth to begin with. So for someone to authentically believe these documents, they would need to be pretty lenient when it comes to reasonable skepticism. That being said, I'm not here to say what people should or shouldn't believe, for the most part. The entire topic of remote viewing, astral projection, and out-of-body experiences, for me at least, is fascinating. And there's at least some evidence that these types of experiences can yield unexplainable results. However, and this is where I absolutely will start telling people what they should believe, there's another level to the story right now, which in my view borders on, to the clinical definition of the word, blasphemy. After this story went viral, like mega viral, starting on Twitter and then spreading across the internet, certain conservative influencers began unironically and with seemingly sincere intention here, claiming that the Ark of the Covenant, the one that had been displayed at Mar-a-Lago, was real. I showed this guy already, Jack Posobiec, 3 million followers, saying, "Told you the one at Mar-a-Lago was real," but it wasn't just him. James O'Keefe, the Project Veritas guy, also 3 million followers, chiming in as if to confirm that what was being said is true, and he's about as high up as it goes in conservative influencer world. Laugh all you want to, it's April 1st after all, but scroll the comment section and you'll find that some people actually believe this. Except, if you spend even a matter of seconds researching beyond what the Twitter man told you to think, you'll immediately find that the Ark displayed at Mar-a-Lago is a replica, which was further displayed all around the world after. The replica itself is actually very impressive, taking 3.5 years to fully make with 17 volunteers using donated gold and Egyptian acacia. It was financed by a man named Louis Topper, and it briefly, very briefly, visited Mar-a-Lago before moving on to Jerusalem, now being moved periodically and displayed at different locations as an inspirational historical object. I'm not precisely sure where the cutoff is on what is or is not deliberate blasphemy, but Donald Trump does not and did not have the Ark of the Covenant on display at Mar-a-Lago. Somehow, in a dizzying display of influencer and media behavior, a Twitter thread about 2-decade-old declassified CIA documents pertaining to 4-decade-old operations during the Cold War somehow ballooned into a full-blown international news story across dozens of separate outlets, then morphing yet again into a claim in front of tens of millions of people that the real Ark of the Covenant has not only been found, but it was displayed at the home of the United States president. What, in between his crypto scams? Keep in mind, this is the biblical object that will kill you if you touch it and contains the physical tablets for the 10 Commandments. I'll leave you with this here, okay? Back in the 1970s to the 1990s, a man named Joseph McMoneagle, working for U.S. Army Intelligence and the Stanford Institute, was classified as Remote Viewer Number 1 for what was then called the Stargate Project. Now, the Stargate Project was terminated and then declassified in 1995, but similar to what we've discussed so far today, it was a military special access program about remote viewing, where the aim was to gain intelligence information from places that normally couldn't be accessed physically. Well, Joseph McMoneagle is basically the poster child for legitimate military intelligence gathered by remote viewing. At one point, he was apparently laughed out of the room because he claimed, right, without evidence, that there was a new class of submarine being developed by the Soviet Union, which he couldn't possibly have prior knowledge of. Here's the thing, it turned out the submarine was real. It was called Typhoon, and it was being developed in secret at the location that he said it was, but with satellite imagery later confirming everything he had said, the concept of remote viewing began to look a lot more plausible. He claims that over a 20-year span, with a budget of roughly $20 million as well, a team of about 15 remote viewers saved the government hundreds of millions of dollars by finding lost missiles, deducing communication devices, and sometimes just being presented with sealed envelopes and then asked to provide information about whatever was inside. It's truly incredible stuff, I have to say. He located hostages, verifiably, gave coordinates for where a spacecraft would fall, and this intelligence was then used with corroboration, when it did get used, in a multitude of actual operations with beneficial impact. He claims that remote viewing works roughly 15% of the time, but even establishing that kind of alleged authenticity right now, when it comes to the Ark of the Covenant, he had something else entirely to say. When speaking to the New York Post, Joseph McMoneagle said, quote, "In this case, it is a training target done on a whim. I would challenge the entire practice session as bogus. No one attempted to ascertain the ground truth of the material, and everything said was accepted on its unknown and unverified merit." End quote. Keep in mind, that is the literal poster child for what should really be described as the most legitimate program of remote viewing that the United States military has ever conducted. Calling the CIA Astral Projection Project Sunstreak program, the Ark of the Covenant story, bogus, and flatly discrediting whatever it is that viewer number 32 claims that they saw. Sure, it's a bit of an appeal to authority argument from me, but I think it's relevant to showcase that even the people who legitimately participate in these programs when they are real also think that the CIA probably didn't find the Ark of the Covenant in the 1980s. At the end of the day, no one can really be sure. I think genuinely no one in the world can say for sure. That's like the nature of the subject matter here. But having watched as a multi-decade old CIA document was turned into a flavor of the week internet story and then morphed into a literal claim that the Ark of the Covenant is at Mar-a-Lago, I wanted to chime in with my own take and discuss how the concept of astral projection, remote viewing, and out-of-body experiences might be fascinating. They might even have legitimate uses, but I don't really believe that the CIA found the Ark of the Covenant, and I certainly do not believe that they chose to stick it in Mar-a-Lago if they did. That's it. If you want to support the channel, check out the links down below. A special VPN deal, like always, huge discount there. Locals and Patreon for monthly memberships, merchandise, social media, etc., etc. But I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching. Question everything. Thank you for putting up with my sick voice. I can't really do anything about it. And have a nice night.